Hello my dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I've got, well, I don't know what I've got. I guess it's book talk, but it's about a short story. But it's already come out, so it doesn't have to be spoiler free. Today we are talking about Cut and Thirst by Margaret Atwood. This is a short story that I came across on NetGalley, and it's an Amazon original, which this is the first of those I've come across, so I don't quite know what the deal is with that, but it's Margaret Atwood. As a Canadian, I adore Margaret Atwood. As a writer, I adore Margaret Atwood, and when I was a teenager and ready to kind of move on to meatier, heavier, more literary fiction, Margaret Atwood was the obvious choice to turn to. And actually, how I got turned on to her in the first place is kind of an interesting story. Maybe, maybe not. But when I was in the 10th or 11th grade, I think the 11th grade, I lived way up north in the Northwest Territories in a small city called Yellowknife, and there was a new girl in my class, and her name was Jane, and I thought she was just the coolest girl I'd ever met. You know, she was one of those girls that was beautiful and seemed so smart and so trendy, and I thought she was great. And one day in one of our classes that we had together, she pulled out a copy of Alias Grace by Margaret Atwood, and she was reading it, and I was like, okay. So that same day after school, I went to the bookstore, the small tiny bookstore in this town, and I found a copy and I started reading it as well. And that was what birthed my love of reading, wanting to know what this girl who seemed so cool to me was reading. And that led me to a lifelong love of Margaret Atwood. I loved Alias Grace, I loved The Blind Assassin, I loved The Handmaid's Tale. There's so many fantastic books. When I got to the end of this short story, to the author blurb, it said, like, Margaret Atwood is the author of more than 50 books. 50. I haven't read them all, but someday I will. Someday I'll be able to tell you I've read them all. Today's not that day. However, we can cross this short story off our list. And I really enjoyed this. I really did. I didn't know a single thing about it going in. I saw Margaret Atwood, I clicked, let me have it, and they did. Anyway, so like I said, it's a short story. It's like 30 pages, very short, and it's about 3 friends. They're elderly women who have known each other for decades. They were all professors at the same college together for a very long time until, you know, now they're retired. Anyway, we were plopped right into the mix of it, and there will be spoilers here because it's 30 pages, but there's not really spoilers, if you know what I mean. Like, whatever we say here today, me and you, you'll still be able to read the story and enjoy it. I'm just giving a spoiler warning in case I say more than I intend to. So these 3 women, we're plopped in, they're all together, they're visiting, and they're talking about murdering a bunch of men. Like 8 or 9 of them, a lot of men. And the reason they're so upset with these men is decades ago, a 4th friend, a woman named Fern, who is currently undergoing some really troubling health troubles. There was like an organized campaign by these men who were all writers and professors at the same time that these women were, and they had this organized campaign to try to take Fern down a peg with her novels. She wrote historical fiction, and they thought it was frivolous and girly, and they didn't think she deserved the accolades that she got. And for whatever reason, they just wanted to take her down a peg or two, you know? And the other three women, they truly believe in their heart that the stress that caused over the past however many decades is what's leading to her poor health now. And because every time she put out a book, they'd be back at it again. Like a toothache, just not going away. So they decide they're going to kill these men. They're all elderly, them and the men, and they're like, you know what? We're doing it. We're going to do it. So they're plotting and planning, and they get together every so often to make these plans. And while they're making these plans, they touch on a lot of really interesting things. Throughout this story, there are themes of friendship and aging and career jealousy, and I thought it was a really lovely little story. I loved it. And as the planning sort of progresses, they begin to realize that, you know, it's not as easy as it might have originally sounded. But they're pretty confident in, like, their, in the fact that, like, even if somebody suspected them, like, if you're like, oh, these women killed these men, if you looked at these women, they're all elderly, they're all, you know, PhD holders, like, nobody would believe them. So they're pretty confident in, like, their ability to get away with it. But still, things are always more complicated than they seem. And at one point they go to visit Fran, and somebody brings up the past that, you know, orchestrated campaign against her, and Fran's like, yeah, well, you know, over the years, 3 or 4 of them apologized to me privately, saying that, you know, they wouldn't have done it, except the guy that was kind of leading the charge was so intimidating and such a asshole that they didn't feel like they could not go along with it. So she's like, you know. So then the one woman who's told that, she goes back to the others and she's like, listen, some of them have apologized. We're going to need to redo the list. And anyway, from there, it's just finding out how things are more complicated than they seem, and oftentimes, nature or karma or the universe or what have you has a way of dealing with these kind of bullies so that you don't have to worry so much about it. And I just loved it. It's going to be 5 stars from me. I thought it was great. Margaret Atwood, she's just... she's a one-of-a-kind talent, and I'm very proud that she's Canadian. And one thing that I've always loved about her, like especially when I was a teenager starting to read her books, is I learned the meanings of so many words, because the way that she writes is so beautiful, and the words that she chooses, like she doesn't shy away from choosing words that perhaps you're going to have to look up in the dictionary, which I did many, many times. And I loved that. I loved learning new words from her. And she's 84 now. Like, I was saying to my husband earlier, I was like, we're running out of time. We're running out of time with her. And I just can't wait to see what other gifts she bestows upon us before her time comes. So I definitely check it out. Like I said, it's an Amazon original, whatever that means. I probably should have Googled that before I told you about it, but I'm sure you can figure it out. If I know one thing about my lovely viewers here, it's that you're a very smart bunch. So I bet you can find it on Amazon. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. It's very late on a Saturday night, and I can't sleep. So that's why I came back down, read the book, put some makeup on, came to film, and here we are. So I'm gonna go. I hope you're having a great weekend, and I will see you again very soon. Bye, guys.